My fellow Majors, the time has finally arrived. The first huge update for Menace, adding a ton of new mechanical systems, new enemies, and fleshing out of the endgame is just about to arrive. And the news of that comes alongside a patch that is fixing a couple of glaring issues that we've been complaining about recently. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and let's talk about these things, shall we? Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you enjoy what I do, including my ongoing coverage of the early access period behind Menace, one of the strongest upcoming turn-based strategy titles to be released in recent memory, then a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. As always, I'll have links to both of these updates in the description down below if you want to read the full breadth of them for yourself. We're not going to read it verbatim and check out every single little bullet point, but there are a lot of things to talk about, so we're going to go directly in with patch number 9, Balancing and Fixes. And I'll tell you right off the cuff, yes, this includes a fix for the obnoxious new Corrupt DNA mission for the bugs. As it says right at the top of the article, most importantly, we balanced the new Xeno DNA City mission to make sure enemy reinforcements are not too overwhelming for more cautious players. Besides that, you can find all the other changes and improvements in the change log below. Is this going to be enough of a change for this mission, given how particularly aggravating it is, especially if you get it early on in your campaign? We're going to have to see, but I do think that there's going to be at least a positive shift here. So what are we looking at? First of all, enemy vehicles will now also destroy light forests by driving through them, which is nice. No more just hiding in the forests for pirates and the like, which I very much appreciate. Remaining ERA accessory uses are now shown in the UI, and the Vanguard perk no longer applies during story missions, which is interesting because we don't have many story missions, but it was a little weird when I was able to Vanguard forward during the first Menace Construct enemy mission and kind of feel like I was messing with the order of events a little bit. So I imagine as we're going to be getting more story missions added, this is going to become more and more important. As far as bugs, apparently the alien melee attacks not actually triggering the Counter-Strike ability of characters that had, like, you know, shotguns equipped, had the ability equipped and would just blow away anything that attacks them. That has now been fixed, which is going to be a massive buff when fighting the bugs. Drug accessories are now refilled by the scavenger perk crate. Units can now immediately sabotage if they spawn inside an objective area, something I've never actually encountered before, but that is nice to see. Rescued squaddies apparently got assigned to their leader even when the leader had been afflicted with permadeath, which is kind of funny. I've not actually let any of my squad leaders die yet, but the idea that you could just lose a bunch of squaddies because they were permanently attached to an SL who you could no longer access because they were dead is pretty brutal, so that's a good change to have. And then we have some major balancing stuff. Again, the Corrupt Xeno Hatchling DNA mission no longer has unlimited reinforcements, and the rate of reinforcements coming into the map has been reduced. There's nothing here about the number of bombardier bugs and blaster bugs being changed, and that is still, I think, probably the biggest issue that the map has, given its advertised style of play that you're meant to be engaging with. But at the very least, I imagine this will definitely help. I have not yet had the opportunity to run across this mission again in my current playthrough, or since this update dropped, so I can't say from personal experience how much better it feels. If you guys have encountered it since the update, do please let us know. I'm hoping that this pushes things in the right direction, though, because it is a cool map idea. It just needs tweaks. The number of enemy forces in the POW Rescue Rogue Army mission has been buffed, which sounds very scary, but, you know, we'll have to see how that plays out. The max range of rocket launchers has been increased from 8 to 9 tiles, which is nice. The max range of autocannons has been reduced from 10 to 9. So now launchers and autocannons are on an even playing field, which is good, and reduced to the ideal range of miniguns from 4 to 3. I don't really know how I feel about that one. Not a huge fan, I don't think. Miniguns were not that super great to begin with, and then making their ideal range even lower, like 3 is very close, man. You are not often getting in fights at that close range, unless this is a change that's kind of preparatory for new updates, new missions, and new sorts of engagements that the game is going to be expecting you to take part in as future updates come. If that's the case, cool. All the better. I'm fine with that. But right now, without that potential context, this feels a little odd. Now that's the patch that is currently available, and it's a relatively minor one, but that's because we have a gigantic update coming in just a couple of days that's going to add quite a bit to the game. So This is the Redacted Update 1. If you remember, a couple of dev diaries ago, we heard about the gigantic change to the Menace units, what loot they were going to be dropping, and how you were going to be able to incorporate into a crafting system to upgrade your existing gear with their weird bioorganic kind of eldritch beyond the stars technology that they use to make all their forces to get a one-up on them and the enemies, especially because other enemies beyond the Menace units are going to be using it as well. We now finally know a little bit more about what that's going to entail and when it's going to be joining us. It's going to be joining us very, very soon, so let's talk about this update. There's going to be a new workshop and blueprint mechanics that are going to come out with the update, and that's where you're going to be able to unlock and research over time new ways to utilize the Menace parts that you're going to get from fighting these enemies that they'll drop after missions in the same way that like bugs drop parts that you sell or pirates drop gear you can use. You know the drill. There will apparently be a, quote, plethora of balancing changes, unquote, as well to come with that update, so we'll have to report on that once it actually drops, but some of the updates that are being highlighted right now are as follows. First of all, promotion tax is being removed. This is a big one that I've seen people complain about quite a bit, where upgrading your SLs feels kind of like a downgrade in a way, because the ultimate determinant of what you're able to do on a mission is your supplies cap, and upgrading an SL with a cool new ability only to realize that now your strat no longer works because it slightly pushes you over the supply limit that you had for that mission kind of sucks to a lot of people. So now that has been removed. However, this is not just a straight buff for every single player of the game. Quote, to compensate, we increased the squaddy supply costs across all ranges, but reduced the squad's base supply costs. Also, promotions themselves now cost fewer or more promotion points depending on a character's star level. A 1-star character is cheaper to promote than a 3-star one. So this is going to, first of all, make characters like Lim, who already are cheaper to promote, extremely strong, because now they're going to be easier to promote across the board, as well as being easier to promote than their 2-star equivalents. It's also going to mean that it might be a little bit easier to get lacking characters like Carta, Jean Sai, Bo, and the like, who are all 1-stars, to get a little bit more caught up and give you more incentive to utilize them over absolute powerhouses like Darby and Griefinger. Getting ahead of potential issues as well, the devs have also increased the base supplies of players from 630 to 690, as this could throw off balance in the early game, and they wanted to avoid that, so it'll be a little bit easier to field a little bit more stuff in the early game. We've also gotten a new skill following on from the cut wires skill that we got in the previous major update. You now have an ability which is very expensive to remove wreckage from the battlefield. If you've ever been in a situation where you're fighting through fairly narrow corridors between buildings or down roads and the like, and a vehicle gets destroyed and suddenly you can't get past it anymore, it can completely throw off your plans for navigation, which on one hand is kind of a tactical consideration that I do like having to make, but it being something that was completely uninteractable got extremely annoying. Now, units will have a very expensive 70 AP remove wreckage ability, so if you absolutely desperately need to get through a particular pathway that the wreck of a vehicle is currently in, you can spend basically a whole turn to be able to do that. Is it ideal? No, of course not, but at least you can interact with that now, and I think that's going to widen the breadth of the sandbox significantly. And now, for the big one. The Construct overhaul. This is a pretty girthy section, so bear with me here. Quote, the Constructs are the main faction of our game, but we're severely lacking in uniqueness, variety, and style. We reorganized them a bit, overhauled their stats, and gave them new skills. We also removed the morale damage on construct attacks and want to transition them to do morale damage through other means. We've also reworked all of their textures, especially their skin, to give them more contrast and underline the dead human body look a bit more. And you can see that from this screenshot here. They definitely look way more fleshy and, to borrow a term from Warhammer 40k, servitorized, which I definitely enjoy. As far as how the different units have been changed, we're going to run through this pretty quick here. The construct drone, the squads of like little basic dudes, are less tanky and of lower accuracy, but have more of them per unit, so you're gonna have to put a little bit more firepower into them. And when one of those individual elements gets killed, they unleash a scream attack that does morale damage to all non-construct units nearby. So you're going to have to be pretty careful about how you engage drones, lest your units get shattered and start fleeing while you're just trying to take them down. The apparent intent of these units is to be a proper tar pit unit that tries to bog you down, keep you from moving around, from clearing things out as quickly, really slow you down and be less efficient, which for an infantry unit, for a horrifying mess of biomechanical nightmares like this, feels pretty appropriate. Following on from that, the construct soldiers, the big boys that have the big rocket launchers, well, they no longer have rocket launchers. These are the backbone of the early constructs, or as they are now being called, quote, the first wave constructs, which is a very ominous statement, if I do say so myself, because these are already pretty spooky enemies. They're still tanky, but they no longer have the rocket attack. However, the damage against armor of their heavy repeaters has been increased, so they can still threaten light vehicles, but they're not just going to like blow something up like an ATGM team. Concerningly to me, they can now also mark a target, which is going to increase the accuracy of drones, high damage attacks with gun crawlers, etc. Definitely gives me flashbacks of the Rogue Army and how much of a nightmare marking units and then hitting them with ATGMs can be, so we'll see how nasty this really gets, but consider me a little bit scared. The gun crawler has also been fairly heavily reworked, speaking of. It now has a rocket launcher, which is horrifying. It apparently does as much damage as the player's PAL Tier 1 rocket launcher, which is very spooky indeed. And they also have a new scanner skill that's going to massively reduce the concealment of your units around them, which is definitely going to impact the concealment game a little bit. I feel like it's going to push you to be even more reliant on long-range concealment fire, but we're going to have to see just how big of an AoE this has and how long it lasts to get a gauge on how impactful it's really going to be. The Shamblers are pretty much unchanged. Apparently the devs are pretty happy with their role as a sort of rush unit that can explode and force you to deal with them so that they don't explode on you. However, their attack range has been increased to 4 tiles, and they've been buffed to deal more armor damage. They're going to be even spookier than they were before. Finally, there is a new Construct Master unit, which has been redacted in the current image that has been shown of it, but definitely looks like a dude like doing some jazz hands and dancing around, which is pretty funny. We don't really know exactly what they're going to do. They want us to run into this and experience it naturally in the field, but it's apparently going to be an especially powerful support unit that will, quote, rattle things up a bit, unquote. What exactly that's going to mean, I don't know, but I'm very scared. I can only imagine that's probably going to like provide some sort of massive hive mind buff to the rest of the Menace units or something along those lines. Then finally, of course, the constructs are going to be dropping new loot that is going to be used for that new workshop update that we previously talked about. If you want to review all the details of that, I will have it linked in the description as well. All told, I'm extremely excited about this update. Menace has very much been lacking an endgame feel up to this point, which again makes sense. We're still very early in the early access period, so this seems like a really strong step, at least on paper, towards achieving that endgame feeling. With any luck, we're going to see more story missions added alongside of it, or at least preparation for more story missions, and I'm extremely excited to dig my teeth into what exactly we can do with this crafting system, and what sorts of absolutely insane, busted mid to end game weapons we can make. Of course, though, I am very curious to hear what you guys think about this. How are you feeling about these changes? Have you played the Xenos DNA corruption mission since this update? Is it feeling better? What are you looking forward to with the new constructs and the new gear and equipment you're going to be able to get as a result of them having these new drops? I'd love to hear about all of it down in the comments below. Let's strike up a good conversation. You know, I'll be down there chatting with y'all as well. For now, though, I think I'm going to wrap this one up here. Thank you, of course, as always, to all of my channel supporters, whether they be patrons or YouTube members. You've been seeing their names scroll by on the right-hand side of the screen, and it would be so much harder to keep this whole thing running without that direct support. So thank you to all of them. If you would like to throw your hat in the ring, then there will be links to both of those in the description as well. With all that said, though, my name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Thank you all so very much for watching. I hope that you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, more importantly than anything else, be good to each other, y'all. Bye now.